Start, yeah?
We're starting.
I did a little bit homework. He's not here. I forgot his name. What's his name?
David.
Oh.
He's in China.
China. Oh, what?
Flying back on Shabbos? That's for sure.
So, let me repeat this again. So many people have told me that tuna fish is a problem. So many people was telling me, it's not the first time I hear this, so many people always argue that the tuna fish the OU gives is a problem of Bishalakim. Well, the first and the last time wasn't here. Yeah, the regular. Not the first time. So I took time this morning. I wasn't really feeling well, so I pushed myself. And the Kamat, all the Achronim say that it is okay. You know, in yeshivas they always say you can always find individual matter, you can always find individual machma.
But there was a big follow-up after Yeshir, and they found out, it depends where, that many tuna fishes, they have this Yeshivim from different places, they prepare the tuna the way you prepare chicken or mushroom, as a real steak.
Then it's a problem.
And then they make it into...
Yeah. But then it's a problem. But they were arguing, the people that Machmirim always told me 20 years ago already, this comment.
But maybe they don't know the Metzias of today.
Yeah.
The people that there was a whole chain of emails here, and they mamish had such a Metzias.
Yeah, it could be.
That the tuna fish is actually made first into a tuna, it's made into a steak.
It's fair enough. Okay. Could be. That could be some do it that way, but most do it. I saw they were doing it here many years ago before they moved to Thailand. Is they put it into a steamer. So this question comes up. This is not negay just here. This is negay many things. Like he was telling me afterwards that the argument is that Rabbi Shustam explained that since if you do it a certain way, there's Bishul Akum, so even do it a different way, it doesn't make it not Bishul Akum. That's what I know. So I see the Aruch HaShulchan, the Marsham, and I should show you a Taz, or Kseg, and the Aruch HaShulchan says potatoes. If you bake potatoes in a pot, you bake it or you cook it, that's not all Shabbat Chalochem, unless you make it in a special way. A regular potato, which we all know, you don't serve regular potatoes at a wedding. Even though you could, if you do it in a fried, and this way it will become Bishalakim, certain ways they make the fancy way it could be. But the way they do it right now, a baked potato, a cooked potato is no Bishalakim. The biggest raya, all the Chorin bring is from a Taz. If you look in the Taz, Os Yud Beis, they all bring this Taz. Kuf Yud Gimel. The Taz is on the right, how you say this, the right column, and it's in the bottom. Page Hay. I want you to show you something. So Mechaber says, Dugim Ketanim, you see Yid Beis, the Mechaber says, Dugim Ketanim Shemolchim Yisrael. Small fish, the guy salts, Harenk Shemolchim Yisrael, Oiv Dig Chomenen Kemoshiz Bash, she mixes Bishul, so Achakech Miturim. Then afterwards, it's Mitter. Okay, because why? Why after the salting is a Mitter? Because after salting, you could eat it. Since you could eat it, it's called Nechel Chai. Means after you salt. It doesn't make a difference. The goy salted it, the Yid salted it. Salting is not Bishalakim. Once it's salted, so I don't care if the goy cooked it. Yeah, it doesn't make a difference. It doesn't. So look the Taz. Now look at the Taz. The Taz says the Kivish Shenecha K'moshem Chaim Al Deim Melicha. Since you could eat it raw through salting, Ein Ba Bishalakim. There's no Bishalakim. And then the Taz goes on, Vala Melicha Tchila Gozi, she goes Rak Bishul Shel De'esh. Okay, that's simple. All that is simple. He's explaining, I have a small fish. They used to salt it, and then they would cook it. The thing is that since after salting it's able to be eaten, that's called Nachol Kamoy Shichai. You can eat it raw. So if the guy cooks it, there's no Bishalakim. Okay? Now, Eila Hakshois, who are fill out the Eish, Enkam Bishul Akum, Domrina, Begemore, Dogim, Ketanim, Eine Oila Shulchan Melochem. The Gemara says small fish is not Oila Shulchan Melochem, period. That's the Kasha. Teretz Bis Yosef, that Achal Marichem, Oilam Hem. Yeah, Dogim, Ketanim, small fish, you cook it, it's not Oila Shulchan Melochem. You salt it first, you do something to it, then you cook it, it's Oila Shulchan Melochem. So you can have the same fish. I salt it first, and then I cook it. It's oile shulchan malachim. I don't salt it first. I cook it, and it's okay. Doesn't mean I'm sorry. If I salt it and I cook it, then it's a problem. It's okay because salting. Yeah, but you see from the Taz that the fact is that if you do it one way, there will be a problem. You do it the other, is not a problem. After you can do it this way, it's okay. In doing it the other way, it won't be okay. You don't say leipuk. That's what he was saying over. I heard this from others, this argument.
Where did it come from?
I don't know. I heard this from Rabbanim, and not from years ago. It was I heard this from besides he quoted. I heard it from Big Talmud Chochem, and I was arguing.
Because if you're going to say that, you really can't eat
Right,
anything.
you can nothing. Everything could be made,
Right.
and everything. I mean, it's.
So this argument was different. If the R tuna fish is
It could be. There could be. I'm sure the Oy knows about it, and they give us shlucha. They argued all the time before. I mean, it used to be done here. And I used to go 25 years ago. I went here once for the OU for emergency. They moved it to the. If they do it that way, everyone agrees. There's nothing to
Okay,
disagree.
Rabbi, just to be clear, I don't know, I looked online about how they process tuna. So there's a cooking, and then they can it, and then they cook it again. But you're going to say that after the first cooking, it's Eilah Shulchan Malachim?
It's cooked or steamed.
Huh?
Steamed.
Yeah, right.
No.
That says cooked, but I don't know technically if that means it was steamed or cooked. It's cooked
No.
somehow.
I watched it. The reason why they do steam it, not because they steam it because it preserves the flavor.
It's steamed in the second time because it's steamed already it's steamed before you put it in the can.
So, but theoretically, if it was cooked in an oven, then canned and put in a thing, you're saying that that would be a problem? Bishul?
No. What if it's steamed? If they steam it, steamed tuna is not oil shulchan malachim. If they steam it, I don't care what they do afterwards. It's edible already. It's not oil shulchan malachim the way it is. What they do is, because I watched this. They give tuna steaks at fancy dinners, fancy brunches, whatever. Not. It's very obvious. You would not give your shviga. I don't know your relationship to your shviga. You wouldn't give your shviga tuna fish. You know what I'm saying?
But see, that in and of itself is something that I was thinking about. Like, can you just say, hey, when you cook a tuna, even if you forget about the steaming, let's say you don't want to come onto that heter, right? You just say the way it's cooked. If you ever seen the cooked tuna fish, it gets fully cooked through. It's not something that would ever be served a la shulchan malachim.
That's true.
You understand? It's not cut into a steak and seared nicely the way you know.
But that is no. That but the bottom that's a machlekes. I mean, okay, it's true, but then we have to know can it be?
You said there's no difference. Fine.
Yeah,
But
can
what
you
about
cut
something else? If you cook something in a way where it's just, it's cooked, it's edible, but it's not.
Then
cooked
it's
in a-
not oil shulchan malachim.
Shouldn't we look at the end result of what it is?
No, yes, we do. It depends on what. Mushel, last week we explained beans, raw, all peas and the beans, raw. Right away, the peas on the pot you can eat. They dry it up. Now it's not edible. Now there'll be bishlakim if it's oil shulchan malachim.
What he meant to end is that you were saying last week that if chicken was once Elchonon shulchan malachim, even if it was then made into something.
Once, if it's cooked in a way.
No, what I'm saying is the end result. It's because it looks like it depends how you cook a certain thing. So we should just say, if at the time it's ready to be served, tuna fish is not oil shulchan malachim. It's not.
That's true. But there is a chumrah this way. If I make it, let's say they made the fish in a way that's right now oila, but now they added something else. They made it differently now. If it's once became, let's say your chicken, leftover chicken Shabbos, my wife makes a chicken salad, right? Chicken salad is not oil shulchan malachim, but chicken was. So we're not going to say now that you made it into chicken salad, things changed. Once it was cooked as a chicken, it was oil shulchan malachim, it becomes asa. I don't care how you diced it and sliced it, and now it's not going to be. Understand? There's many rise to this.
Would you say that the tuna fish is one process where, meaning, it's not like chicken, which was a completely cooked thing that is a
Right. I watched the way they did it here. Could be things changed. They put it into a steamer. It gets steamed, and it looks like the fish that you put into the can. It's a big fish. And that's why it's not all, the way steamed fish is not all shochem malochem. You never serve that way fish.
Since people eat sushi today, it's
That's another argument, right? Right? Not all. I was told, I asked people who do sushi, not all fish are good for sushi, but tuna is good for sushi, and so is salmon. So today, it's not a problem. That's another. Right. I mentioned that 2 weeks ago. Nowadays, that it's sushi, and mamela, there shouldn't be a problem. But 20 years ago, no one ate here in America raw fish.
In Stano, when you add all these things up, then it makes sense why the OU says it doesn't need.
Yeah, but they did it before. They did it before the sushi was a styling. You have to speak up.
Why does this halacha emphasize dogging and kitani?
It's talking about if fish was salted, right, and now a goy cooks it, even though now it's oila shochem malochem, since it was edible after the salting, it's not a problem of Bishul Akum.
Yeah, but why? I mean, a tuna is a big fish. Does that matter here?
No, I'm just giving a marshal. I'm just giving an example. Today they don't serve. I never saw small fish served ever.
Anchovies like that?
Yeah, anchovies is served
Oh, what?
at a fancy meal.
No, certainly not.
No, I never saw that. I always pay attention to these things. I even even not so kosher meals. I was just trying to see what they serve. I never saw serve these small fish. They always serve it like a big steak or something.
They grind it up and they make it on hors d'oeuvres.
It is in the French cooking.
Hors but listen, it's
It's
not
not
our.
like a cracker or something like that, and they serve it as hors d'oeuvres, which is even fancier.
But then it's a problem. That some hold, if it's I mentioned this, some hold if it's made for hors d'oeuvres, and they would at a wedding where they have hors d'oeuvres, they would serve this at a fancy meal. Then many hold it's a problem.
I don't think anchovies are cooked. They're salted. They're salted.
Ask him.
They're fine, they're like herring.
They're not.
Then it's not a problem. Then halal not a problem. I thought anchovies was
So
yeah.
when we say cooked, it has to be cooked under flame.
Yes, flame. Yeah. I said last week, oh, you were not here last week. I said also, but if it's microwave is also good. Microwave is also good. Microwave is not a problem, Bishul Akum.
Anchovy from Peru is a problem because of the worms. That's what I read.
He said there's worms and sardines that are coming up.
That's right.
Okay,
From Peru.
all right. Let's I mentioned, since you mentioned this, I said, did we learn the shach? I showed the shach. What? I showed the shach base, I think last week. The shach base says that, look in the shach base, it says the kishkas, how you say the kishkas, the guts. No, I'm not talking about today's kishka, I'm talking real kishka. Yeah, today, those days, it's just illegal to sell it in America. That's why I never saw kishka, but in the good old days, this was a big Shabbos meal, like cholent. Everyone, the word kishka comes, kishka is the intestines. They would clean out the intestines and they fill it up, and it was a whole. But anyway, so it says in the shach that it's there's a problem of Bishul Akum. And you see shach beis, page dalet, look, page dalet beis. You see, you have see it beis kusa isaveter kervayim. The kirkavim is by animal, kirkavim is by bird. He says, "B'neimayim avkim ni'el ochleim laben inish." The chticharu leskaber. The person eats it. It's not a man. I don't know. When it says afa biken, simushi b'shal akim. Now, why? So,
Because it's meat.
now many achronim want. There's some achronim. The Pri Chodesh is a yochid b'duva. He wants to say Chazal asad meat, even though some of the meat are not oila shochem alochem. Okay, I would say across the board, something like that. Finish. Chazal said it's also. That's how the Pri Chodesh. But most achronim learn differently. Many achronim, the Avnei Nezer and other achronim learn that the pshat is this was served as a d'oeuvres. That's what he reminded me. they used to not eat kervaim in the middle of a meal. Like anchovies, they would eat it. They would and a shulchan malachim. For hors d'oeuvres, they would sell like today hot dogs. The many hot dogs are bishrak. That's the question: be bishrak or not? That's the question. Even though you would never serve hot dogs, so according to these achronim, that if you would serve hot dogs, since hot dogs is served for hors d'oeuvres, it would be a problem. But it's liver. Liver is not served at a fancy meal. Doesn't make a difference. But you never saw liver served at a wedding. Never. But for hors d'oeuvres, you did put it out, right? They would put out liver for hors d'oeuvres. That I've seen a lot of times. So that is, according to these achronim, that would, since it was served fancy way at hors d'oeuvres, so it'd be a problem. That's what the Shach learns as Bishulakim.
Liver is fried. We can never cook liver. Fried on
After fried, you could cook it. After you broiled it. But I'm just saying, liver, you never serve this. I don't know why, but maybe I'm mistaken. You saw liver served?
Is bishulakim for broiling or has to be cooked?
Doesn't make a difference. Sili is also bishulakim. And the reason why there would be a problem is because they would serve it as hors d'oeuvres.
Like foie gras is liver, and it's one of the biggest delicacies in the world. You know what I mean?
I never heard the name barbecue.
What is that?
It's
Goose
duck
liver.
or goose livers.
Yeah, the Hungarians used to eat that.
In Israel, that was a very big industry until recently.
Yeah.
For humanitarian reasons, they stopped doing it. But I had it out there. It's fantastic. Trust me, it's definitely a halacha from Allah, that's for sure.
Now that you mention, I'll tell you what the whole thing was. This was the machlekes in some Seifa and the Sanzeruf. Seifa in Hungary, it's called gestopte gens.
That's gestopte gens.
I don't know how you say gestopte gens in English. Who wants to translate it? They would take it. My mother, as a child, this was her job. You put it into a goose. They put food, and she would have to squeeze it down the food this way. And what do you say? Fatem pitum. Okay. Right. So the liver of that is unbelievable delicious. So the Chassidim, the Sanzeruf, was machmer. He sold this treif. Now the Gemara says you could do it. Sefer always said you can't argue with the Gemara. So anyways, there's a whole Rebbe showed about it. The Sanzeruf showed that a treif. Sefer in his house they didn't. Yeah, the shala is right. The shala that gets you have to worry it's a hole in the veshit, in the esophagus. Today, so what they did is they put in a plastic pipe. So machaya.
Even the Chassidim can eat it.
Yeah, even the Chassidim can even. But then came the I don't know, these people who are the Peter and such. You're not allowed to do it. And shine. They still do it. I still do it. So just. So that is taka shor, and that was a delicacy in Europe. My mother says that was a great delicacy in Europe.
I heard about this in yeshiva, gestopte gens.
Yeah, that was what?
Foie gras.
Huh?
Foie gras.
Okay.
Foie gras.
We said Siv Gimel. We're up to Siv Dalet.
I know, this is Gimel.
So, yeah. Now, many of these
So
things.
the Shach doesn't actually give his own reason for
No, he doesn't give any reason,
He just says it's us, and then he lets everybody else try.
and everyone wants to know why. So the Prichodesh is like plague, and other Chachamim are not like plague. It is because it's oila on a derves, like that's what it is.
Does that mean that the other appointment, they don't agree on this life play when that applies to me?
Yeah, right. They disagree. They disagree.
We're machmer today like the Prichodesh?
No, it's anyways. Most of the things as good as a derves. Yeah, let's say hot dogs. Salami, maybe not. I don't know the difference of salami. I don't
Real
know.
salami,
Maybe.
by the way, it's not really cooked, but that's another, real salami. is
It's
never
not cooked.
The ones we have here are, well, like in Europe or South America.
But
They're just dry that they.
okay, but the hot dogs is cooked.
Yeah, that we have, yeah.
It's
But I heard there's no meat in the hot dogs.
and someone told me it's people eat it raw. Is that true?
No,
They're cooked already.
Yeah, exactly. You eat them raw because they're cooked. When you buy a package of hot dogs, they're already cooked. Doesn't mean you're really eating it raw. You're just eating it as a
Okay.
package.
Okay. Let me just say another question. The Chachamim say, Z base. The Tosis speaks about beer. Why is beer no Bishul Akum? Many of these halachas now discussed in Shiurim that this the Pri Chodesh and Pri Toy bring down.
No, beer should be pasta.
Beer.
It comes from grain.
Beer is not pas. Beer is a drink. It's made from barley, hops, but it's a drink. It's not bish. It's not pas. It's a question of bish. They cook it. So Toysis asked this kasha. Toysis asked, how do we drink beer?
You make a shahak.
So Toysis answers this answer. Since we make a shahakal, because the main thing is the water, because even though anything that you put in mezoinus, you should make a mezoinus, but we say no, the main thing is the liquid. So since we make a shahakal, that's why there's no bishul akum. And this, because of this, coffee and tea and all these fancy coffees that you have at Starbucks, I can't even pronounce those names, all are not a problem of bishul akum, because like beer.
Or you can step in to any of
Well,
those.
there's
Yeah, it has to be. It has to be.
other problems.
If it wouldn't be a problem, conscious. You get people say if you get a regular coffee in Starbucks, not a problem. Forget the kashrus. The bottom line is, why is coffee okay? You buy coffee. It's okay because there's no bishul akum, because whenever the drink is the main thing, even though it's like it's a beer. Beer is cooked. And so, see, today beer is not so chashuv, you know that. But beer used to be very chashuv. Today beer is being abused. I tell people you can't make kiddush and can't make havdalah on beer.
Yeah.
No, it's not. Beer is not like it used to be. Today it's not oil today it's not Chama Medina. It's not Chama Medina. Today you would never invite someone on a beer. You go to a ball game and drink beer. If you have an important meeting, you serve beer or kosher with coffee. I'm asking you a meeting. Wine or beer or coffee?
A microbrew. You serve a fancy microbrew. I have no problem with that. You
But,
serve good beer. It costs a good amount of money from a microbrew.
I asked a lot of business people.
Whatever it is.
Rabbi, at the Srs06, we serve beer.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean anything. Doesn't mean anything. We eat Shalom Shabbos too. That's not.
No, but one second.
At weddings they have beer.
One second, but.
Yeah, but I ask people in
It has to be
business.
something fancy
It
now?
has to be something that's. It's
It has to be
something.
a customary drink.
It has to be a chashuv drink. Beers today, when you go to the Super Bowl, you get drunk with a beer. That's what it's made for.
But you know, orange juice is also something that's cheap, but it's also served as
No. According to many, I mean, the artists Shonim whole doesn't make a difference. The artists Shonim who learn has to be a chashuv drink. Chamar Medina means something you would sit down and drink as a chashuv drink.
So according to them, a fancy coffee would be preferable to a beer.
Their beer, right? Chashuv coffee,
To make on Abdullah.
Abdullah.
In Brazil, we made havdalah on coffee.
Yeah,
Over
understand.
beer.
In Brazil, Chamar Medina.
And they drink coffee. It's chashuv azah. So they're not coffee. But I want to tell you, the Alter Rebbe does say that you should on kiddush you should never make not on yash, only on wine.
And even on havdalah.
Yeah, the says also Avdallah. The Ravs, the Shulchan Rav says even Avdallah, you should make a wine.
But then with secondary choices, no.
Yeah, secondly, you can make a schnapps.
But isn't there an opinion that says that a drink that comes from water being added to it, like coffee, what's coffee? It's really water that's gone through,
Doesn't make it.
is not as good as where like an orange juice or something like that, where, you know.
You don't see orange is hard to say it's Chama Medina because you don't invite people and drink with orange juice. It's not a chushev drink.
The word Chamar is from Chaymer, but it's
Chamar is like it's Chama Medina means they don't have wine. The Rambam shit is the Rosh and the Rambam learned Chama Medina meant there was no wine, so we'd sit down instead of wine. What would they treat as wine? They would treat. That's why going to the Rosh, going to the tour, we have Kedem or the whatever, the Chabad wine, whatever, would supply you whatever you want. There's so much wine, Baruch Hashem, today. It's unbelievable, and it's not expensive. So according to those Rishonim, there's no such a thing as Chama Medina anymore.
you have to make it always on.
You have to. But the Rambam shit doesn't seem that way. The Rambam shit, it seems that any time you would serve instead of wine, you would sit down and report the meeting. If you're right with that expensive beer, you sit down. I asked lawyers and business people, they always sit down with the expensive coffees. I once went to a very... No, but they would give wine. He was right. He goes to business meetings. I was at a meeting where they gave wine. It's not true. We was a business meeting with lawyers. They wanted to know if you should go to the inter or not inter, a whole difficult thing. They served wine. They bought kosher wine from me.
It's very rare that alcohol is served at a
That's for a different reason. I asked the lawyer because they don't want to be sued. Because if you leave drunk, then they're liable.
In general, it doesn't look professional when you're drinking alcohol before, I think, like 5 o'clock in the afternoon or 4 o'clock.
That depends on what level of business.
I mean, I think like in our office, we have a pretty professional office, you know, at meetings, they have sodas and there's, juice, you know, coffee and
When
coffee.
the stand next to you, you'll be in the next level, and the rest of you, they get together and they drink wine and they drink whiskey.
No, so I think,
Big business like that.
one second, but so that's, no, you're right. In the
So it's
evenings-
location now.
It's about, it's a Madrega, they go out.
You make a bell on scotch.
Scotch. But if you have wine in the city,
If you don't have wine, you don't want any else.
that's not an excuse not in your house. That's just laziness. I mean, you don't have your house, you ask your neighbor, you go to Ralph's and get yourself grape juice. That's not an
If you're
excuse.
at It's not like, Hancock Park, you know what I mean? It's not the, if I go to, the Johnsons next door, trust me.
They don't have grape juice?
Huh?
They don't have grape juice
They
here?
do not. No, I'm saying sometimes you want out. That's what you say.
Not everyone.
I say, listen, we have 5 kids, then the Shabbos very often, your grape juice is finished. So you gotta make Abdullah, what are you doing? You have orange juice in your fridge, or you have beer.
You ask your neighbor.
Huh?
That's it. And Happy Aloha, the
Listen,
truth
maybe
is.
it's better you think to go to the store and buy it.
Yes, for sure.
Okay.
For sure, you have to go. Now, really, that's Aloha, that's clear. Okay.
Ralph's get 2 64-ounce for $7 right now. You got a grape juice. Not so much special. No limit. Yeah, what is
So basis on the rights of Rabbi Bishul.
What?
What's the prohibition?
What's called what?
On Bas Akum, you said Mishum Chasna.
Also, Bish is also chasnas. Yeah. Okay, let's not see if Gimel Rabbi saying. Panada seems to be like a pizza, but it was covered both sides, and it was to pick meat. Panada she'ofa v'di chomasira is filim shenoig hete pas akim nishashimen neser shibe'en mishibishal akim. The fat, they used to put some fat between the, like a falafel. Instead of putting the vegetables, they would heat it up with fat. In good old days, they held the healthier things as fat. I don't know if you know that. So mainly they put fat, and so even though pas akim is not a problem, the fat is a problem of bishul akim. He's saying. So remember, I explained to you last week, but not in the last sermon. There's a big machlokes. Some learn it's only if you could see it, because the taste of bishul akim, the maskunas achroinim, is not a problem. The best mashal always give to people if the guy plugged in the cholent and there was meat. So you take out the meat, even though there's a taste of bishul akim in the cholent, as long as no pieces of meat, it's not a problem. The Shiurim is talking either it's very noticeable. You could see the bread, you could see fat absorbed. That's why it's not good. But otherwise, there's no isa of taste of bishul akim. Okay, now this is very important. Rabbi is saying, I don't know, but my neighborhood, this is extremely important. And everyone has a shiksa. Some have 2. So let me explain what's going on. Yesh mishamater b'shvucha shaluni, our shiksas, shivcha, maiden. Yesh mishaoisef b'di'evet. So Mechaber brings 2 shittas. Let me just finish what it says. B'di'evet yesh lismach hadivid al-matirim. B'di'evet you could say a semech on the matirim. Afila lektchilen haglu beisisur sheshvuchais v'avudem v'vash meisuki yesh sheichata echem b'nei ba'is ma'at. Let me explain to you what, there's a long shach here, and maybe I'll see it inside, but let me just tell you first about peh. The shoydish of this halacha is a Chuvas Rashba. And the Rashba says, the reason it's mutter, the Rashba says, you know why? Because I have to make sure this guy doesn't work Shabbos. You know, in the times of the Rashba, slavery was okay. And you had a slave, Eved Kanani. You know, Eved Kanani, you have to make sure doesn't work Shabbos. Now, even though some places they couldn't make the Eved be Megai themselves, So the Eved stayed a goy. Still, the goy is not allowed to work for you. Shabbos manat Torah. Manat Torah. If you own a slave, even though he did not convert to become a Jew, manat Torah is not allowed to work. So the Rambam says, since he's your slave, there's no Bishul Akum. He's a slave, like, there's two reasons. Either because there's no chasnas. People look down at these things, respect them. Or because you the kiyat balabais. So the Eved, the Chazal say, your hand and the Eved's hand is all one. Oh,
His hand is your hand.
yeah. So the kid said that's what the first shit the Rajma. The second shit held though, that it doesn't make a difference. The biggest problem now, the Ramu says the minig is to be makel. The times of the Ramu, you have to remember, Rajba lived in Barcelona. I'm not a historian, anyone who knows history. In his times, by the Sephardic countries, they had a slavery. But Ashkenazim, for a long time, slavery was abolished. It means with Ashkenazim lived in Germany, France, and all those places for hundreds of years before that. What does the Ramu mean? He lived in Kruka. The Ramu lived, and he's saying that we could be soymich on this. There was no slaves.
Soymich that what? That's
The
okay.
Eved, if a shiksa cooked, but the Eved is no Bishul Akum. It's soymich, but it's a machlokes, you could be soymich. Yeah, but that's the kasha which everyone asks on the Ramu. And some say, that Shachalon asks us, I'm just saying about Peh, the Riches Gudel. Some say, the Ramu held you right. We don't have that, but he understood in the times of the Shulchan Aruch, when you hired a guy, he could not quit on you. Today, we live in America, a guy could quit whatever he wants. You could do nothing to him. Even in Europe, in certain places before the war, if you were hired by someone, you had to work. Finish. Contract will beat you up if you don't come to work.
Even in the time of the Ramah.
The time of the Ramah was that way. So some Acharonim learned, the Ramah learned, since even though he's not Gifoy Kuni, you know what Gifoy Kuni means? A slave, you are the owner of him. So that did not apply by the Ashkenazim. But when you hired a guy to work for you, he had to come in. Today, you have a right to quit. And the boss cannot touch you for quitting. You know what I mean? So,
What about contracts then?
it doesn't make a difference. You have a right to quit. You can't force it. That's money. Yeah, that's money. Those days they would beat you if you don't come to work. Understand? This is America. It's someone. I once spoke. One second. I once gave the shi many. A guy told me in England, till about 200-300 years ago, it used to be there less. He told me when it changed in England. If you were hired, if you stopped working, the guy had the right to come and beat you up for not coming to work.
Okay, so therefore.
So some learn that's the Ramum wanted to extend the heter, saying that since it is like like an evet, he's obligated to come to work, so there's no Bishul Akum. So that's what the Ramum means to say. Let me just finish. So that's otherwise the Ramum doesn't make sense. How does the Ramum? But so the Shach.
But why can't you say it makes sense based on the opinion that says it's all because, if someone's working for you, there's not any.
That doesn't make a difference. It doesn't make. So what is working for you? Why is there no Bishul Akum? He could be nicely working.
The whole Bishul Akum stems from
Chasnas.
Chasnas.
So you have a nice shiksa working for you. Why wouldn't it be chasnas?
Nah, it's your shiksa. You know what I'm saying?
Story in the valley.
Huh?
Story in the valley.
Oh, sorry.
Why wouldn't that happen? You don't hear stories like this?
No.
Stories in the city. You don't hear stories like this? I mean, come on.
Listen, I remember once that they said that in Poland there's no intermarriage because they call the shiksa, right? As opposed to Germany, right? So it's the same concept. Why do they not
Doesn't make a
intermarry?
difference. That doesn't.
They're shiksas, so if they're working for you, you know what I'm
It
saying?
didn't always work, Danny.
That is always didn't work always. The truth is, history recounts exactly what you said. That the reason why in Russia and in Hungary until they always looked at the shiksa, it was called the shiksa, didn't call it a housemate or a house, whatever they call it now. They call the shiksa, but that doesn't make the aloha. You can have someone working for you, but it was nice, and I know stories. Unfortunately, there's an Alti in Europe who many people know about the story. He had a maid, and his wife died. He married his maid, the shiksa. More than a masa. It doesn't stop it. But the chiddush was that they want to learn in the shach, in the remut, that the pshat is since he has to work. Shach doesn't like this. Shach doesn't like all this. Shach says maybe the remut is saimich on a third shitta. Now this is very important to hear and not to jump to conclusions. There's a third shitta, there's no Bishul Akum in my house. There's a shitta that way, the Tur brings a shitta, that it's in my house, there's no Bishul Akum. Shach says, none of the bring it down, maybe the remove was soimach b'di'evet on this kula. That means that it's in your house, because the remove adds another thing, a third thing. I want to explain to you Rabbi Isai. The third thing which the remove adds is very, very important to understand how they used to cook. In the good old days, you didn't put on the flame and you cooked. You could put on the flame, you go to sleep, and your wife could go out shopping, and the cooking low, and everything is okay. Good old days, they had to have coals. Anyone who makes a barbecue, you got to keep the coals, stir the coals, otherwise it dies. So there was a habit. Everyone passed by, you would just stir the coals. That was like a habit. They were not paying attention. You walk by, you stir the coals, stir the coals. So if it's a Yiddish house, the Ramuz says, probably someone stirred the coals. And the Ramuz holds that stirring the coals, middle of cooking, even the guy put it up, takes away Bishul Akum. So there's like three reasons over here. Mainly, there's one reason is maybe a shifcha, dinner v'nevet. Second reason, the house of a yid. And the third reason is because they stir the coals. Some you have assumed that they stir the coals. That's the three reasons. The first reason is because she's like a slave. So the first reason, many achronim hold it doesn't apply nowadays. That doesn't apply. Your shiksa could walk out if she doesn't. There's consequences, monetary consequences. There's nothing you can do. She should make her come work. Someone explained to me that it's just like in the Choshen Mishpat, there's also a halacha. Someone told me, you lawyers have to help me out. There's such a law, you can't make someone work. And this is a new concept by the Goyim. It wasn't that way. In the Gemara it says, if a guy owes money, you cannot force him to go to work. The only time you can beat him up to go to work, believe it or not, if he doesn't support his wife. But if he owes you money, he doesn't want to support his doesn't want to work. I don't want to work. You can't beat him up to pay me a chayv. You can't force him to. So according to that, many hold that it doesn't apply.
That's only according to the first.
The first. Second thing is in the house. So the Shach alone says menat soimach, and the third also doesn't apply nowadays. The third thing kula is because stir the coals. Who stirs the coals? There's no stirring coals anymore.
But the second reason, right?
House.
So you said the Shach argues on it.
Right. But
but I'm saying that is one.
that's one heter.
One shita, right?
Right. Right.
So like in a B'diavad case.
So I'll tell you what happened.
That's
Suffolk. Let me tell you what happened. There was a rich guy in town, and a Choshev Rav came, a Yeshiva, a big Talmud Chacham. And I won't forget this. He came to shul Friday night. He comes to the shul, didn't daven bus, daven someplace else, and he says, "I don't know what to do." And he's all paid. He realized that this wealthy home, you live in Hancock, you grew up. The lady doesn't cook. The shiksa cooks everything. When I came to the shul 30 years ago, I had to explain to the people, Bishul Akum is also. They didn't dawn upon them, the Bishul Akum. There's a few things that, sort of...
the flame, they weren't turning
nothing. The lady goes out, she does her shopping, her nails, and she schmoozes and drinks coffee. The shiksa does bakoy mikoy koy. That's how it sees. So the guy didn't realize this, and this is a big, very wealthy guy who was going to give her a big estate in his house. Okay. I showed him the Shulchan Aruch. He's not, not all yeshivas know halacha, and he was beside himself. So I took out the Aruch HaShulchan and I showed him. The Aruch HaShulchan says, Shasat Chak, see this mitzvah, you could be soimach on the kulas. But it's not so simple, because he's soimach on Bayis Yisrael, he's soimach also the Evet. It's very questionable, many achronim that doesn't apply nowadays.
What about by itself?
That itself, no one is making with that alone.
That's not sufficient.
That's not sufficient. So, the Aruch HaShulchan says, "B'shasat chag," such a story you can make. But Enochanama, and
But Shulchan was not as it, so
He does say, he does speak out that even without staying the coals.
It's not, if the guy only ate, let's say, bread and kugel, you know what I mean? Like, and tried to stay away from the food that are not Elchonon Blachim, then
Yeah,
you can-
I was young when he came to me. Then the next time when I learned the Chazad Halacha, I should have told him the chont you could eat, the gefilte fish you could eat, but don't be so nervous. B'shas Masa also was lost for a minute. This goes many years ago. And then when I remember relearning, and I thought to myself, I could have told him much better. Gefilte fish is not oily shulchan malachim. Say the soup you don't like. And the chont you can eat, the potato kigel you can eat. And
Changing the flame a little bit, sort of like,
changing the flame, we later learned that, but who changes the flame? The shiksa?
no, I'm saying, after the fact, the fire is
No, once it's cooked, it's cooked. Once it's cooked, it's cooked. He came,
stoke the fire, you know?
the times of the Shulchan they used to stoke the fire all the time. So we later learned that's a machlokes that helps the Bishul Akum out. That, and he reminds me, that itself, the Ramu says, we paskin stoking the stove alone is not good for Bishul Akum. But I learned this soon. Yeah, the Ramu holds that stoking the fire those days is good. But even that we machmer. But
But
anyways,
if you started the fire.
is that what you're
3
asking?
degrees is okay.
yeah.
The only reason is.
Oh, you start, what I
Start the fire
introduced,
3 degrees is
what
okay.
I introduced to the people, everyone had to get themselves an oven with a pilot. So for Ashkenazim, all Ashkenazim, and all of them. And I had a guy who rebuilt a house, and it's a lost kosten, and it's illegal to get in California such oven. But he bought one from Nevada, brought it over, the huge fancy oven with a pilot. Now I told someone, he told me you can't buy it anymore. We tried all over the internet to get it. It's very difficult to get such a. Finally found someone who's going to sell them like this. But if you have a shiksa, that's the problem. There's other problems you have a shiksa. She shouldn't cook. So what happened, I had another guy, so he never lost his wife. His wife passed away, and he would go to the business, and he had a shiksa at home, did nothing. She chased the dust, but whatever. He was a single guy, never till he remarried. He was an older guy, never. So I told him, what's going with the waiting? The shiksa doesn't cook. She knows you're not going to come back till the late. So he says, no, she listens to me. So I convinced the son-in-law to walk him in the middle of the day. He walks him in the day, and she's cooking big time for herself. So he went and he locked the gas. Told her from now on, till you can't trust her, if you have money, it's not a problem. He got it downstairs, he got a main switch. So every morning, he'd leave, he would close the gas, put a big lock in the garage, and she couldn't open the gas. But again, coming back, so this is very important, but you're not allowed to be soymich on this. Many people, I know someone who told me that is, Rav told him, he could eat by his in-laws. This is, Baruch Hashem, today the community is better by me, but used to be, mamish, the shiksa would cook everything. So but that's a major problem. You can't be soymich on this. This kula is only b'di'evet sheb'di'evet.
But we're okay if the shiksa prepares everything.
Yeah, yeah.
And
If you
so-
put on the
So
fire,
turn on the flame.
if you turn on the flame,
Ashkenazim, not Sfardim.
that's Svardim. For Ashkenazim, you put on the flame, you put on the pilot. Or we'll later learn the pilot there is a huamachmir, but the meaning is to mimeko. All around, you put on the pilot, that's good enough.
If you leave one burner on the stove on, could she light another burner?
Right? She can use from that burner, but I don't know.
If she'll do that.
If she do that.
We can't
So
rely
the
on
reality is, the Sfardim and Solo, maybe they should eat the cholent if it's made by, let's say, the
They might double leader.
Double leader has workers that, that
No,
are
you
making.
have a lot of Sfardim over here.
But cholent is not a problem.
The meat,
The
the meat is the problem.
So they shouldn't eat the meat,
More meat for me. Make sure that he'll take for the Sfardim, you're gonna sit, I don't like fires. There you go.
No.
Doesn't help.
You like the fires, it's fine for Ashkenazim, but it's not okay for Sephardim. That's what we just.
We're going to learn the Svardim of Eim
You
Machman.
have to put the thing in you have to put the
What
crock
you
pot
said, the
in
chicks
the
that
thing.
you make for your breakfast on coffee in the morning, the problem is dinner when it comes to
I don't know, it comes ready already.
Yeah, but you grew up in the neighborhood, the shiksas didn't, your friends' houses, the shiksas did everything, they didn't. Yeah.
My wife's housekeeper, my mother's housekeeper cooks the whole Shabbos, every Shabbos, for years. But my mother, of course, turns on the fires.
Okay.
Come on,
Okay.
In the morning, she turns on the paint, turns on the oven, and then Martha's doing the rest.
Okay. My mother's an Elcha lady. She calls me a lot to Charles. I know, but that's the Elcha. The other ones, it took a long time for me to convince them that they have to put the flames on and and it was a bother for them. You know, your mother is not that type, but others who would come on, Rabbi, I have to be home and for dinner. I mean, I want to be home. What do you say?
My nails. The appointment.
Yeah.
Very important.
Okay.
The concept of debit, it's that they're an evet, that they owe everything. I mean, you say a house, a maid that lives in your house full time, 24 hours a day,
Well, that's not an evidence.
it has to be an evet, somebody who's involuntary servitude, that you control them.
Right.
And why specifically that?
Because it's like
Only then do we say they're like the Baal.
the explanation is very simple, and they hold that chasness is because she invites me, right? She's got to work. She does it because she's told to do it, not because she wants to do it. Understand?
I mean, that's the same thing with a lot of the people here. I mean, you have in Toronto, for example, they have a lot of live-in maids. They don't want to do this, but they live in, and that's.
I'm just saying, but that's the makilim. The machmirim, how doesn't make a difference. And the Shach says you should not be soymech on this. You know. In Toronto, the shiksas do baka mika koil. Same problem.
We have a lot of live-in maids who are there 7 days a week.
What do you say?
A lot of live-in maids 7 days a week.
Yeah, but I'm talking about from Eid, that you don't know what they
I
do.
don't know what they do.
How about in different countries? Let's say maybe
In Morocco, it's up to the
Morocco, I was just in Morocco, and the people that work for them in the homes are much like
There are slaves.
There are slaves, but they're like slaves. Or like in China.
Their wives are slaves.
What would it apply there?
Why are they slaves there in Morocco?
No,
They can't quit?
I don't know. I don't know if they ever quit.
That doesn't make a difference. The shiksas here in our neighborhood also, if you pay them well, they're not going to quit. You know what I mean?
I think it's a little more there.
It has nothing to do with that. It has to do, some of the Chayyim want to say if they have to work and they can't get out of the job because they signed up, then it's okay.
Yeah, but would the Sephardim hold like that?
Sephardim, yeah, that's nothing.
Sephardim that
to
are machmer, where you
do.
actually.
That could be.
have to
Mechaber
there.
brings 2 days. Mechaber brings, that's not a steer on the Mechaber.
No, but if you have a slave, and the hand of the slave is the hand
Yeah.
of
You
the
say the
owner.
only way that it would be okay is if you consider them like slaves.
Right, right.
So that's one of the ways it could be signed. People were signed up. And the other two examples.
It's a Jewish home. In the Jewish home, there's no Bishul Akum, not Tzemach Hadat like a Tchila. And the third, they always stir the coals.
So, but the evidence, if there's, you can make, if
But
there's
the Eved, B'Shas Chak, it happens before Shabbos.
You don't need to meet, there's hardly a case of the other.
What does cooked mean? You say once the food is edible to be eaten.
You know, we'll see later. Ma'achem and Resu. We'll later learn about this, a whole sieve. Okay.
If there's a pilot, so that's like you had the pilot, it's lit always. And then
1 second.
pilot that was lit, right?
Yeah.
And then they turned on the flame, right? That's how it works. You turn on the gas and you light it with the pilot that's lit.
Right.
Whatever. It's always burning. Then that's okay for the good use, yeah?
Yes, if they're free Ashkenazim, yes. You put on the, that's what many people do. You put on the pilot. Many people are machmer. Leave it on. Many are machmer. I imagine your mother is machmer. Some hold the later learn the pilot is not so like tchila, so they put on all the flames. Probably your mother heard it from me because I tell people it's best to put on all the flames. So many people do just put on the morning, put on the flames, and the shiksa does the rest.
I missed the shift, so apologize. Isn't there I mean, if it's a customers, a company, I have no idea which worker in some factory.
I said this a few times. Only by Paspalter, which is a company, we said it's okay. By Bishul, all the Shiurim Achronim, Kilom B'Peh Echad. No one, and I didn't find anyone to be Mekel. The say company is different. Why? Chazal made a plik. That's clearly by Bishul. By Pas, they came, if it's a Paspalter, it's made to sell, and that's Chazal because a Pas Yicharudim is too difficult to exera. But on Bishul, does, even though in the company. So even if the company makes something, there's a problem with Bishul Akim, it's a problem.
It is pretty strange if you think about it. Like, I could go to my next door neighbor, a shiksa, who's good looking and turn on her stove, and now she can cook me whatever I want, and it's no problem. But a factory in Iowa, you know what I mean, that's putting out some, what do you call it, that's, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, Chazal knew. Look, it's right before Purim. One of the Medrash says, why was the Gezeres Haman? So the Gemara says two reasons. Nahan Moisesida, and what's the name? Because they in Shtachvel Etzenem. And the Medrash seems to say because of intermarriage, because the 7 years they intermarried. And it's amazing. I always am astounded whenever Chazal this halacha that till today, when a guy in those days, it says in the Chazal, they fasted Yom Kippur, they kept Shabbos, put on tefillin, the Bein Tam's tefillin, they put on everything. The wife was a shiksa. It's unheard today. You hear a guy has his wife, a girlfriend, a shiksa, you know he doesn't keep Shabbos, you know he's already gone. That's the Metzias. You see how unbelievable it is.
You have many people like this.
No, but they became from after.
Right.
They weren't, right.
Yeah, I'm not talking about it comes from after.
Marries a shiksa, come on.
And stays from.
Yeah, and stays from as
We're
well.
living in a little bubble here. Well, there people go out and do chinuch and they go to college, unfortunately, and they get married.
But they could become non-religious. They fry out totally. No one keeps Shabbos and kosher. I once had one time, and that's because he became from. One time, he used to call me with Charles all the time, and then one time he calls me up and he tells me, Chabad Shlich, put him in contact with me. He will come in at Bishul Akum. His wife is. But he became from. He became from. It's a second marriage. His son from the first marriage was very from, made him from, and he liked the second wife, and he just wasn't going to give her up. She doesn't want to become. But he kept Shabbos and kashrus and.
So is that, can they rely on?
No, I'm saying, but that works downwards this way. Guys becoming from, it works. But I'm just saying the reality is, once today, Chazal is so incredible because this keeps away chasnas.
But once you've already married her, okay, at that point is it okay? I'm saying?
It's true.
No, I'm saying like the guy that's married to a shiksa who's coming from, right? Is someone going to say, hey, listen, I'm saying married to her, is he allowed to eat her food, or is that also a problem?
I want to tell you a fascinating story. I was involved. I'm not Chabad Shlich, but he came to me because he became from, and he wanted his wife to become a Giyoris. Her father was Jewish, her mother wasn't. And I don't want to say the name, I have one of the shluchim over there, and someone told him to come to me. He didn't tell his wife, but he put on the pilot, he made things, he didn't tell her nothing. He was patient with her, that she should be, in Baruch Hashem today, she's a frum lady, she looks Jewish, she's very sneezed, I'm just saying. But I remember that he became from, on his own, and he really liked his wife, he didn't want to get rid of her, he just tried to encourage her to become, he was totally secular, he became from, I don't know, Chabad Shlich made him on the campus from, he was already married. So I'm sure this happens to many people who deal with such people and such. That happens. Okay. But you know what it is? The grass in the other side is always greener. If you allow me, I'll say I'm moire di gewort. Kovet Piram. I'll tell you I'm mavel di gewort. The Gemara says Human men atoyre menayim. You know, famous Gemara. The Gemara says Hamina eitz azois. From the tree, the Shem asked Adam, Hamin, who ate, I told you not to you ate. What does Haman have to do with Eitz Adas? What does Haman have to do? There's a Meiri Digavot from the Shiva and Meir. He said, Haman, after he had the first party with Esther, he leaves the house and he sees Mordechai's lo yichir v'lo yishtachva. He gets so angry, he's meeting with the Zeres Ishtoi, and all Chachameyu, they sit on a meeting, and he counts his money. He was the richest person in the entire world. You know, a Seres Alufim Kikre Kesev is an unbelievable amount. It's millions and millions of shkolim, this was. 10,000 Kikre, I once figured it out, there's a few tons of silver. So he was, the Chazal, when it says, Haman found one of the oitzes of Yosef. So imagine Bill Gates has a meeting, and he's worth $80 billion.
No, there's a richer man, someone in Mexico.
He's worth $80 billion? Okay. He's worth $80 billion, and he sits down, and he has 10 children. Everyone is a minister, is a booming success. And he says, and I have the greatest covet. Everyone bows down to me. Everyone. Not him. He says, V'chol zeh aneni shoivali. It's worthless. Imagine Bill Gates would tell you, all my money is worthless because one reporter, he wrote a business magazine, didn't write a very favorable article about me. It's worthless, all my money. He says, V'chol zeh, but it's only a sugar now. So the Banisham said to the Sabarat, that's Haman. Banisham tells Udamarishan, you could eat, there's 1,000,000 trees you can eat here. One tree you shouldn't eat. And that's the one you want to eat. It's always the one that you can't have, you want to have. That's the clip of someone. Like, he had, you say he doesn't bow down. Like a chef does to with him. So it really is amazing. That's why Haman, that's the way people intermarry. I spoke to people like, someone told me, I quickly say a story. I heard this from the Baal Masa alone. There was a Rebbe called the Kapishnitzer Rebbe in New York. He passed away many, many, many years ago. And he said over the story that a lady came to him and crying bitterly. He lived in Crown Heights. Cried bitterly that his son is getting married to a shiksa. So the Kapishnitzer Rebbe told the mother, what do you want from me? He was crying and crying. The Rebbe, you have to talk to my son. He said him a story. I heard the story from the Kapishnitzer Rebbe as a young child. I once said of a rabbi the story. So he said to him, okay, bring this son to the son. Son came in. He had a whole lot of Kapishnitzer said, I don't want to hear any of your stories. I want to tell you, I'm a Holocaust survivor. He was hiding in Vienna. And he said the story like this. In Vienna, we were all put into a big auditorium in Vienna, he says. And there was a guy in the auditorium was banging his head against the wall. So they told me, Rebbe, the guy is, he's so much in pain, maybe you could calm him. And over him, why are you banging the head against the wall? He says, I'll tell you why. As a young man, I fell in love with my neighbor, a shiksa. And my parents said shiva me. This was a German guy. My parents literally sat shiva on me. Had nothing to do with me. I had 2 children. When the SS started rounding up the Jews, my wife got very nervous that they're going to say she's Jewish. She says, she's not Jewish, but her husband is Jewish. This is a shiksa, he tells him. A shiksa is never going to stand next to you. I'm not interested in your stories, the Chaim el-Shulam. And he dropped the shiksa. Okay, so the Muhammad. Now this is a whole new.
Where are we? Page 8. Hey. 8. Page 8. Which?
So ich habe euch gekommen, Shibisho, euch that cooked. When in the Schavel Bishul, he had no intentions to cook meter. Now this is a Gemara, that's when I brings it down. Ketzer v'chom shehitzes or ba'agam. A goy put on fire in the agam. Agam is a swamp. Kelahaver a chatzir, to burn off the, I say chatzir in English, the swamp, the weeds, the dry weeds, to burn it off. And this bashe by chaguvim, and chaguvim are grasshoppers, and the Yemenites know which ones to eat. It's okay. Now, the reason is because he didn't have in mind cooking. This could be negeya. Tell you what is negeya. There was a long time ago, the lights went out here. We had a few years ago, if you remember my neighborhood, every time there's a big rain, a wind, the whole electric was going to black out. And people ask me that all of a sudden, the lights go back on, and most people have electric oven, and he forgot to turn it on. There was raw food on the oven, so he didn't understand the fire was on. He put raw food on the oven. The fire was on. There was a blackout, and they were waiting. The lights come back. The lights came back. Oh, it's cooking. And then it chapped. I didn't put on the fire. It's Bishul Akum. Chaps nicht.
But you did the first part of the cooking.
There was no cooking. You put up the chicken.
Who's doing that Bishul though?
What?
The electric company?
Yeah, the electric company. So that's why it's not a problem, because they didn't put it on for your bishul. This machaba. This is mamish, this machaba. The electric company didn't have intentions for you should cook. They just put the electric back on.
In this case, you could go to the fields and take the grasshoppers
And
and
eat
eat
it.
it, no problem.
Right. Even outside the shulchan aruch.
I think the OU said the only kosher was Sfardim, by the way. It's true.
What?
Today. No, really.
Right. Even the Sfardim, many they lost already. Which one's a mitzvah? It's only the Yemenites. Some still claim. The Yemenites, they have a Messiah. Which one is okay?
The guys that do the whole, the Messiah dinner, they came to LA a couple years ago.
Couple years ago,
Remember that?
yeah.
They just had one recently in Israel, and also, and they
serve the grasshoppers.
Yeah, and but they say that, the, whatever, huh?
It wasn't grasshoppers. They didn't serve grasshoppers.
Yeah, they did. Locust, at the one in Israel just now.
And maybe in Israel they didn't.
No, not here.
Over here
They
they
didn't serve it here, in Israel. So the OU would have let them serve it here. But they didn't serve it.
Are we allowed to eat locusts if a Yemenite comes and says?
No, with the Messiah, we have a Messiah not to eat it. The question is why not? That's really the question, because yeah, so we forgot. It's like the tchelis. Many claim that we don't have a Messiah. So what? But if you figure it out, that's an old question. Moshe has a whole tshuva why. But the Raisa Mushal. No, he's talking about the Tzina, but he's talking about also Moshe by Mutter. People used in Europe. What mutter did they all use? Charein. Why did they use charein? The other ones didn't grow that time in Europe. In Russia and Hungary. But we do know that the Belgian, and the first one it mentioned is chasa. Chasa, the first of the five is mentioned is leaves, which is Roman lettuce, because we didn't have a Messiah, but we see the way it's described and the early talk about it. It's that or Belgian endives, the endives. Rashi says on the endives. So that's that. The Moshe has a tshuva that you could eat it. Many people ask me, in Chabad you want to eat horseradish, no?
Eat both.
Both, but halacha l'maisa, many people cannot eat it. Tell me there's no way you can eat the horseradish, and
It's too sharp?
it's too sharp. So you just I don't eat it anymore. Yeah, my father was a shul and pack horseradish. That was the meaning in Hungary, and it was grew free. My mother said, "You don't pay for it." Went into the woods.
So you don't eat it?
I eat Roman lettuce. Yeah,
I'm impressed by that. Come on.
what's wrong?
Because it's supposed to be bitter. Come on.
That Chazal said that's like a tchila. Roman lettuce is like a
So
tchila.
you taste bitterness when you eat Roman lettuce?
I don't like it. Oh, you know, I don't eat it.
Okay.
I mean, it is bitter. It has a bitter taste to it. It doesn't have to be a sharp taste.
You don't have to cry.
You don't have to cry and cough. What did the Sfardim use? What did he grow up? You don't know.
The gefilte fish?
No, talking about the murder. Skut? What is that?
You can't eat skunk is hot pepper. Brown pepper.
What did the Sfardim eat? Roman lettuce. Horseradish didn't even grow in the Sfardish countries. It's a mitzias. It was hard to get there. It was an expensive item. So you have to understand, it's very important in halacha how things evolved through history. Many things people did because there was no choice. It wasn't because the halacha was that way. I always try to explain people why they in Europe don't eat horseradish. There was no. We could get salads all year long. There's the time of salads, not Pesach time. There's no way in that. So in Europe you have to have salad. We have greenhouses. We have salad all year round. It's a moifus. I try to explain to my children as they're growing up. Don't think that, once I asked my daughter, how come we have grapes now? It's the winter. So I said, look at the box. What does it say in the box? Made in Chile. I said, you know what Chile is? I took out a globe and showed them what Chile is. You can't believe that.
At the end of the day, if the locusts, if they ate it the whole time,
The Moshe has a whole tshuva about why we not talks about it. I forgot what he says. He explains it why.
What is the right motif then?
The right motto is Roman letters.
And the word that your father ate, not choices.
The best, the only reason why certain people it has bugs, but you clean. It's very easy today to have commentaries. It's very easy to clean. I watch people. I've guests. They don't need a kazais of the mother. If they're sharp, you have to be a little mysterious nefesh. They have a hard time. What?
You have to be Russian. You have to grind
Russians.
it 1 day before the Seder.
Yeah, but that's a big machlekes. Some hold it's not good if you grind it. Big machlekes.
I can even call a couple though. Solution guys are the size of
You have both. We have grind and we have chunks. And we have
I'm wondering why all these years I'm killing myself with the horse
Keep on doing, keep on doing.
I need some lettuce.
Don't give it up. It's good.
I have romaine lettuce every day for a salad. Fantastic.
Depends what you do the rest of the year. If every time I get to live with the Roman
But let me just finish the mechab. Harosh lahav say mitter. If you singe off the hair from an animal, they used to get off before they would make melicha. They would take a fine singe off the hair. So very often the ear would get cooked.
They eat that with the locust.
So, Bishul, if you had mine kigon shehistig atan lemashabo ibuset chile v'nitzapi shel Yehuda kiven leze abusa reile Yehuda bavus. Let's say the guy put on the oven. The shiksa goes puts on and wants to cook us warm something up for herself, not realizing that you had something else in the oven. Then there would be a problem because she put on the oven to cook for herself. You understand?
So the key is that they're not doing cooking.
Right.
And the ears of the, what do you call it? That's called the
Obviously, those days, if it's out of
So,
shulchan.
I think a better example would be like sometimes my fuse blows. So if a shiksa went outside and flipped the fuse, and as a result my stove went back on, that's not intentional.
Right, she had no intention to cook, just puts that on. Exactly. That's exactly, you're right. This is very not the shchiach over here. The big problem people ask me Shabbos, if the the fire goes off, and then it goes back on, if it's okay.
Huh?
If the electricity goes off and then it goes back on. So it's up here, look, it's okay. Food was cooked, it's okay.
Even if it's all cooled down all the way?
So even if it's cold all the way. But there's the question, do you have to take it off, not let it get hot? If it's totally cooked and the city is the one who puts the fire back, the electric, it's okay. I'll explain that.
What about the Chinese?
What?
What about the hot water?
Hot water is also, but even it's okay.
If you can, if the chunks is good, I'm going to use it.
Okay, we'll stop over here.
It's because the hospitals or something like that? Are they